Hi, parents. This is Mrs. Bauer, and I just want to take a minute to teach you how students are learning how to add and subtract right now, and what the majority of the next few months are going to look like. So right now we're in Module 4, and we're adding and subtracting into the hundreds. So Module 5 is coming up, and we're going to be adding and subtracting into the thousands when we get there. So right now we are learning how to add and subtract in the vertical method and using a place value chart. So the vertical method is essentially how we learned how to add and subtract in school. So if you are going over that at home with your children, which I know some of you are, because your kids tell me that they don't want to do math my way, they want to do it your way. Just know that we are doing it your way, and so that's okay. And I totally understand talking like that with your children because I do it with my kid at home. Just want her to get the answers right. Don't care how she gets there. And as a teacher, honestly, I want them to get the answers right, and I don't care how they get there. So the feelings are the same. But I want to show you how our two ways are aligned so that when they're in school, they're not so frustrated because it's a deviation of what you're doing at home, because they're really the same thing. There's just one little thing that you probably aren't doing with them that I am, and that it does have a really good reason for doing it and builds our math knowledge. And so I just want to educate you a little bit so that when you're at home you can talk about what we're doing at school too, so that the two ways are a little bit more combined and aligned, and so that you understand, because honestly teaching is not like it used to be. How we learned how to do things is not the way that our children are learning it, and some people are like, they don't like that because it's changed. But there is a real good reason why we're teaching students the way we are, and it just builds, like I said, their math knowledge and their understanding of what adding and subtracting is and why we do the things we do. So don't just throw out the baby with the bathwater. Some of it is actually really good. So I'm going to do an addition problem, and then I'll do a subtraction problem for you so that maybe it will help you have less fights at home with homework and just give you a little more understanding. So I'm going to write on this board a math problem. So I'm doing 158 plus 34. So I've been talking to the students a lot about how they line up their problem, and the ones should be on top of the ones place, the tens should be over the tens, and the hundreds should be over the hundreds, and eventually the thousands. So for some of my students, I also recommend just drawing these lines. And honestly, when you draw these lines on your math problem, it makes it look like, I'm having trouble. There we go. It makes it look like a place value chart already. So the problem matches the chart. So I'm going to draw a place value chart over here. And a place value chart is just a chart that says hundreds, tens, and then ones. And I spell out the word ones because I don't want them to think that's a zero. So O's and zeros look similar. So I don't want that confusion. And the first thing I want to add is I draw the top number, the bigger number, but it doesn't really matter which one you draw first, because adding, you can switch it around. You could say 34 plus 158 or 158 plus 34. I like to put the bigger number on top because that helps with subtraction later on, where you could never say 34 minus 158. You have to say 158 minus 34. So I like just being in the practice of that larger number going on top. And to me, it just looks better. So 158 is 100, one group of 100, 5 groups of 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8 ones. 1, 2, oops, sorry, my computer is a little lagging. 3, 4, where are you? 5, 6, 7, 8. And I hope my screen doesn't, I hope my face isn't in the way of all the problems like it is right now. We'll see what happens. So then they do have to understand with adding that it's two numbers combined and counted up to get your total. So that will become important knowledge when they subtract. because that's usually where I see the problem. So they do have to understand that it's 158 of something and 34 of something, and we're like squishing them all together and counting them all up to get our total. So now, because we're counting them all up, I'm going to draw the 34 on the place value chart as well. So I like to do it when I'm demonstrating for the class in a different color so that they can see the 158 and they can see the 34. And I even tell them when they're doing their math work at their seat that using 2 colored pencils or 2 crayons is probably a good idea so that they can see the 2 numbers when they do it individually at their seats. So 34 has nothing in the hundreds place, so they leave it empty. And then it has 3 tens. 1, 2, 3. And it has 4 ones. And let me see if I can move my face over. Here we go. Good job, Ms. Bauer. I am not the techiest person. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in Module 3, when we're talking about place value, we had a lot of working on bundling straws. So they know that 10 ones make a group of 10. And we had a group of 10 and we rubber band it. We put the straws all together in a rubber band. And then they learned that 10 groups of 10 make 100. So then we would get these big groups of 10 and we would put them all together and we'd put that big rubber band around it and we move it over to the hundreds place. So these discs, the kids sometimes call them dots. I don't really care what they're called. These discs or dots really represent a group. It doesn't really represent one, except for the ones in the ones place. So that is, let's see, how many ones do I have? 12 ones over there. But those tens are actually groups of 10, and the hundreds is actually a big old group of 100. So I'm saying that because I'm going to say, sometimes when I say to the kids, I'm saying we're going to find a group of 10 and we're going to put a rubber band around it. So that is talking about the straws that we bundled up in Module 3. So I'm going to start adding in my ones place. So in my ones place, you see I have more than 10 discs or dots. So I tell them we're going to take a rubber band and group them all up and move them over to the tens place. And I'll show you how I do that on paper. I'll grab a different color because I like to do that. And so in the ones, I have 10 ones. So I circle them and then I move those guys over to the tens place and I make it fairly big so it's noticeable. So then sometimes I say I move the big dude over. They'll sometimes say that too. So the big dude is my language. It is not teacher language at all. So essentially we made a new group. So it's called a new group. So in my problem, I have to show that new group too. So I have to put my 1 over here. Now in my math book, in the teacher manual, it does encourage me to put it on the line, but I feel like some kids feel like that's part of the answer. So I still do what we do and put it above the problem. So it's on the top. So if you see that 8 plus 4 is 12, we have 2 ones left over here. So there's 2. And you see in the problem, here is my 12. There's the 1 and the 2. So when we do it this way, we're really showing kids why we carry the 1. We used to call it carrying the 1. Now it's called regrouping or exchanging or making a new group. But this is why we carry the 1, because we essentially found 10 ones and moved them over to the tens place. Back in the day when we were taught just carry the 1, don't ask questions. This is why. This is just how we do it. So we just did things without knowing how. And the way we teach now is to teach them the why so that they can do the how better. So eventually this place value chart thing is going to go away and they're just going to know in their head that, oh, we made a new group. And so that's why we put that 1 in the tens place. So now we add the tens and we don't have a group of 10 there, but sometimes you might have to make another circle a group of 10 and move it over to the hundreds. That will happen too. But right now we only have 9, so we don't have to make a new group because it's bundles of 10. 10 is like the magic number in math. So 5 plus 3 is 9. And if they didn't know, or 5 plus 3 plus 1, I misspoke, is 9. And if they didn't know that, they could literally just count up the discs. So if your child is struggling at all with adding and subtracting, this way is actually a beautiful way for them to learn how to add and subtract bigger numbers. So I'm going to put my 9 here. Let me grab a marker. put my 9 here. And then in the hundreds place, I have 1 plus 0. I like to remind them that nothing means 0. That will come up later as they add and subtract more. So 1 plus 0 is 1. And even I have a few kids who like to put the 0 in there. It's called a placeholder, and you will do a lot of that in 5th grade and 4th grade. So it's not a bad idea to get them into the habit now. So that is how we add using the vertical method and a place value chart. And as you can see, honestly, the side on the left-hand side, the problem itself looks exactly like how we did math back in the day. So if you are working on it with them that way, that's not bad. If they are struggling at all, you might want to get out a piece of paper and a pencil and make a place value chart and have them draw it out using this method. I find like it really helps those kids that are struggling with adding and subtracting in general. But like I said, eventually the place value charts in Module 5, like towards the end of Module 5, we will be encouraging kids to, you don't need the place value chart, don't draw the place value chart. If you can do it without it, you can. And I do have some students now who can handle this without a place value chart. So now, I know this is such a long video. I'm so sorry, parents. I just feel like knowledge is power. So if this helps you in any way, I'm glad. If you just ignore it, I get it too. We're all busy. So I'm going to show you a subtraction problem because the procedure is slightly different. So I'm going to erase my board. Oh, I shouldn't have erased the place value chart. We'll draw that back in. And I'm going to redraw my place value chart. There we go. And I'm on top of it a little bit. So I'm going to do the math problem 135 minus 16. So I lined up my problem vertically, and some kids you have to really check and see if they're lining it up perfectly, or else the answer will be wrong. I also still, those who need to, I tell them to divide their problem into like a little mini place value chart where you can really see the ones, you can really see the tens and the hundreds. So in our math book, at least for now this won't happen forever, you will see some of their homework has a magnifying glass on the top of the subtraction problems. And that's just a cute little thing they did to say, listen, that top number is really important. That's the number that we're going to draw on the place value chart. It's also the numbers that might change when we regroup. So you need a lot of attention to that top number. But when I start teaching, when I sit down and start going over subtraction problems with the kids, I ask them what the total is or the whole. So in subtraction, it's very important to know that you start with the whole and then you take out a chunk of it, so a part. And that leads, so a lot of kids want to say the big number is the whole, but when you add, you could have two big numbers. So I don't like to say that. So the top number is the total or the whole, or it's everything we have that we're going to start taking out parts of. So some kids might say it's the big number. It's not my favorite thing for them to say, but their understanding of it might be that. So that bigger number or the total or the whole always has to be on the top of the vertical method, because you cannot have 16 and take away 135. But you can have 135 of something and take away 16. So they do have to understand that going into the subtraction problem. So then I go ahead and I draw, and I'm going to scoot my face over a little. I draw out the 135 because that's the total. So there's 1 in the hundreds. And remember, this isn't just a 1. That's a big, huge bundle of 100. There's 3 tens, which is actually 30. So they're groups of 10. And this understanding does help them in future learning. So I encourage you to talk like I'm talking, even though it feels like it's making it more complicated, but it's giving them more understanding. And then there's 5 ones. So these are actually ones. There's actually 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So then I asked the class, I'm like, do we draw the 16? And they still say yes. But no, I remind them constantly, no, those are the guys we're getting rid of. We're kicking them to the curb. We're throwing them out. We don't want to draw the 16 and add them all together and count them all up. Those are the ones we're taking out. So understanding addition and subtraction and what that truly means is helpful when doing this. So now I start with the ones and I subtract 5 minus 6. So they can't do that. If I have $5, you can't borrow 6 because it doesn't work out. There's also a little poem that we say if there's more on the floor, you go next door and get 10 more. So in 5 minus 6, there is more on the floor. The bigger, the larger of the numbers is on the bottom. So we have to go next door and get 10 more. And that's referring to those bundles again. That dot in the tens place is not really a dot. It's a whole bundle of 10. And if we take off the rubber band, there's 10 ones inside, and we can move them over back into the ones place. And that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. So it doesn't matter which one I grab. I usually grab the one that's closest to the ones. I cross it out. But we're not throwing that out. We're just moving it over. So that becomes 10 ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm sorry, this is slow. So when I did that, the picture changed. The place value chart changed. So I have to change the numbers in my problem. And this is where kids sometimes forget to do that little step. But we practice so much. Hopefully they'll get better at it. So I now don't have 5 ones, do I? I have 15 ones. And usually they have to count it up. And so I cross it out and I put a 15. Now when we were kids, we just put a 1 by the 5 because that's just what we did. We didn't want to know why. We didn't care to know why. That was just all we did. But now kids know that it's really a bundle of 10 that we're taking apart and we've moved over to the ones. But we also don't have 3 10s anymore. We now have 2 10s. So before, when we said borrow and go next door, you're just like, you're going to take one from the 10s and give it over to the ones. The understanding is much more engaging now, and I think it will benefit kids in the long run. But as you can see, the side with the problem on it is looking just like how we learned back in the day. So don't be too afraid of this new method. So then we go back to the ones and we say we have 15 minus 6 now. Can we do that? And those kids who are struggling with adding and subtracting can just go off and go ahead and cross out 6. So I don't care which 6 it is. So cross out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now I crossed out 6. How many do I have left? Well, I have 9 left if I count that. So I can put a 9 in my ones place now. And now then I ask why isn't it working? There we go. And then I go back to the 10s and I say, well, what is the 10s place? What minus what? And sometimes they still want to say 3 minus 1, but I say, it's not 3 minus 1 anymore. We took one of those groups and we regrouped it. We moved it back into the ones. And now it's 2 minus 1. And most kids know 2 minus 1, but if they don't, they can cross one of those guys out. And we are left with 1. And then, of course, we go to the hundreds place and we say, what is that? It is 1 minus 0. And 1 minus 0, we don't have anything to cross out. We can just say 1 minus 0 is 1. And if they want to put a placeholder, which I encourage, they should do that. And so the answer is 119. So I hope this video helped you in some way in understanding how we are teaching adding and subtracting in 2023 for second graders. If you have any questions, please contact me on Dojo. Do your very best with the homework with your children. Remember, I know the homework pack is super long. You don't have to do every single problem. I sometimes think we kill kids with homework. They work at school all day, and then to come home to have hours of homework is not cool, especially for a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old. So just do like 15 minutes just to review the concepts we're learning in school. If they're good at math, do the problems at the end. Do those harder, more engaging problems that sometimes are a story problem at the end of the page. If they're struggling with math, practice some in the beginning just to make sure that we're getting those basic skills in. So I'm very flexible And I love your children a lot. And I hope you have a great day. And hopefully this was helpful. And I will ramble on forever if you let me. So bye, guys.